Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
A magic beyond anything you could ever imagine.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Sagrera Farms on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Locking down the middle of the day.
You really think that's the best idea?
Live from downtown Baton Rouge, this is Hunt Palmer.
It's quite a piece of work.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from our studio downtown in the capital city on this Thursday. It means we're brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Got Jacob back, Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos, working towards the weekend and fired up. You're hanging out with us. Got a lot to do here on this Thursday. In 15 minutes, we'll go up to Oxford, Mississippi. Michael Katz covers the Rebels. We'll talk about Ole Miss with him. Did so preseason. We'll check in on Lane Kiffin's squad just a couple days before LSU and Ole Miss get going in Vaught-Hemingway. Chris Blair, voice of the Tigers, with us in an hour and 15 minutes at 2:15. And Luke Johnson from Saints practice at 2:30, talking black and gold. So lots and lots to do. I actually went to LSU basketball practice and might, I'm not guaranteeing it, but might shoehorn that in to the end of the hour here. It just depends on if we get to everything else before that. It is, of course, September. They don't play for 6 weeks, but it could happen. I'm leaving the possibility open. So brought to you by Sagrera Farms. Let's crank it up the way we do every single day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
LSU and Ole Miss, big one in Vaught-Hemingway. I wrote this in a column and have kind of thought this all week, that the winner of this game really feels like a likely playoff team. There are shocking losses every week in college football. There are injuries that derail seasons. There's a lot that goes on in October, November, and even early December that can impact who's in a playoff. But the winner of this game is going to be 5-0 moving into October. South Carolina doesn't look awesome, is on both of these schedules in their home stadiums. And you got wiggle room if you win this game. And it's a huge one, undoubtedly. When you, the LSU fan, and I'm assuming most of y'all are listening are LSU fans, that's a reasonable assumption. When you think about Lane Kiffin, I would imagine some things come to mind when you think about the personality of his teams. You think about offense, big picture. That's the correct way to think. You think about a lot of points. You think about prolific numbers, and that's the right way to think. He does all those things. And I would imagine there's some of you that think about big plays in the passing game and those vivid memories of him, even at Alabama, some at Ole Miss, when the ball snapped, holding his hands up, running down the sideline for huge gains in the passing game. And that would be correct. He does that all the time. And so because of those things that you put together, you always think, well, passing game, unbelievable. What he does with quarterbacks, incredible. Just loves to air it out. That's wrong. He can. They will. Lane Kiffin wants to run the football. That is the backbone of his offense. Doesn't matter if he's at Alabama. Doesn't matter if he's at Florida Atlantic. Doesn't matter if he's at Ole Miss. It doesn't matter. He wants to run the ball. And that is what LSU is going to have to take away first in this game if the defense wants to have a great day. This is an Ole Miss offensive line that's having to replace 4 starters from last year's offensive front. Only Diego Pounds, their left tackle, is back, but they've got a UAB transfer at left guard, a former 4-star recruit in his second year as the center. Right guard, Patrick Kudas, comes from Arkansas, and he started 17 games between Arkansas and Ole Miss. Jaden Williams will play right tackle. He's made 24 starts for Ole Miss over the course of 3 years. He's a veteran there. But that's a veteran group that's a little bit new, but that is going to be responsible for pushing forward and getting that running game going for Ole Miss. And LSU's job is to stop it. Since 2020, here are the schools in the FBS that have run the ball for more yards per game than Ole Miss. Air Force, triple option. Army, triple option. Navy, triple option. Then you got Liberty and UCF. Ole Miss is 6th. Only those 5 have run for more yards per game. No one in the Power 4 has run for more yards per game. Respect to Central Florida, most of what they've done in the last 6 years has been in the American. So this is the most prolific rushing offense in the Power Four since Lane Kiffin took this job. And this year, they've run the ball 43.5 times per game for 5.03 yards per carry. You're running it 43 times per game for 5 yards a carry. That nets out to over 200 yards a game. LSU, meanwhile, comes into this game allowing half of that 5 yards per carry, 2.6. Clemson, veteran offensive line, big, physical, unproven, wide receiver transplant, but big physical running back. They ran the ball 20 times for 31 yards on LSU. Florida, veteran offensive line, good tailback in Jaden Ball. 27 carries, 79 yards. In those two games, those two teams, 2.3 yards per rush. I promise you this here on Thursday. If Ole Miss runs for 2.3 yards per carry, LSU is going to run Ole Miss off its own field. Blowout. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Ole Miss is better than those two teams. But the point remains, if LSU, without Gabe Relaford, but with Bernard Gooden, Jacobian Guillory, Ahmad Bro, Don McKinley, Patrick Payton, Jack Pyburn, Jamari Butler, Whit Weeks, West Weeks, Devon Keys, Harold Perkins, if that group steps up to the plate and limits what Ole Miss can do on the ground, taking away big plays, which Ole Miss gets huge ones, taking away the opportunity to get chunk plays and then go tempo off of that, and then getting Ole Miss behind the sticks, all of a sudden Trinidad Chambliss' life just got a whole lot more difficult. A whole lot more difficult. But if Ole Miss gets going fast, gets running the ball, gets into 3rd and 2s, creates LSU back on its heels, gets into the game where they can play the play action and get those deep shots that then we were talking about at the top of the segment where Lane Kiffin holds his hands up and you hit those big plays, all of a sudden, now the Rebels are cooking with gas. This is, to me, the biggest matchup in this game. We're going to talk about LSU's ability or lack thereof to run the ball on the other side. Ole Miss's ability to stop the run or lack thereof on the other side. We'll talk about a fifth-year senior quarterback against a D2 quarterback. We'll talk about home, road. We'll talk about Lane Kiffin, Blake Baker. All these things are relevant to this conversation. And there are a lot of ways that these teams are going to approach this game. But the nuts and bolts of this game, to me, come down to this matchup. If Ole Miss can run the ball like it wants to, like it has for 6 years, the Rebels are going to be in good shape. If LSU bottles up Ole Miss any way similarly that they did to Florida and Clemson, good night. And I think that's the biggest deal. Now, I haven't even mentioned Kejuan Lacey. Lacey's got 7 rushing touchdowns for Ole Miss this year. He's transferred in from Missouri. He's done a really nice job. He's not the biggest back in the SEC. He's got good speed. He's not like, you don't double take when he's coming down the field, but he's done a really nice job. And I think that what he's been able to do isn't necessarily pigeonholed into one style of run. Like Jaden Ball for Florida kind of wants to get north-south between those tackles and use that size and strength to move forward. That wasn't available to him. And then Adam Warren from Clemson is 230 pounds as well. And he's a wide receiver. He played his whole career on the perimeter. To say he can't get there and do any damage is disingenuous, but mainly wants to do between the tackles. When you look at Lacey, they do some misdirection. They do some straight read option. It's a different mode because Chambliss is really, really athletic, and DJ Lagway is not really a running threat. Klubnik is, but I would suggest that Chambliss is a little twitchier, a little quicker than Cade Klubnik. But this is a little bit of a different style of running game than LSU saw from Clemson and Florida. But its importance is very much the same. And once Clemson couldn't run, they packed it in the second half. They only ran for 4 yards. They quit trying to run the ball. They didn't score a point. Florida couldn't run the ball, kind of got behind the chains, and you saw third down interceptions come from DJ Lagway. He threw 3 third down interceptions, maybe 4 third down interceptions in that game. So this, to me, I can't overstate the importance of Ole Miss's running game. If you, the LSU fan, think of Lane Kiffin as spreading it out, letting it fly, that's not it. And he certainly, in my opinion, doesn't want to do that against this LSU secondary with a quarterback making his first start against a really good defense. You want Trinidad Chambliss comfortable, running the ball, handing off, third and shorts, handing the ball off in the red zone, not seeing the field condensed, all these things that make life easier for a quarterback, and nobody consistently makes life easier for a quarterback than Lane Kiffin, and that's because his teams run the ball so well. This is, to me, a huge, huge, huge challenge for LSU's defense, and one that will teach us more. I feel really good about what LSU did at Clemson, but they've been terrible since. I feel really good about what LSU did against Florida defensively, but they've been a disaster. And I can't take anything I see against Ole Miss or Southeastern and do anything with it. What I feel comfortable telling you is that LSU is better than Kentucky and Arkansas on defense. They're better than Tulane on defense. And if Ole Miss all of a sudden hands the ball off 32 times for 93 yards, that's just not going to be enough for Ole Miss to win this game. That number for Ole Miss needs to creep above 150 up towards 160. And they do that with the consistency with which they run it. And then once they get it going, the tempo with which they run it, and they want to wear you down. LSU's got great, great, great depth. I went through all the names up front. It's amazing. They've got 7 guys on the defensive line that are veteran that they really trust. And they've got really 4 linebackers that they really trust. And they can rotate in and out to keep guys fresh, but when can you not do that? When Ole Miss starts running tempo. You cannot substitute your defensive line if you give up an 8-yard run and Ole Miss gets on the ball and doesn't sub and wants to go again. If you give up a 21-yard run and Ole Miss wants to substitute again, wants to go fast and doesn't substitute, you can't substitute. When you can substitute is when you stop them for a loss of 2 because they're not going to get right back up on the ball and go again. It's imperative that LSU get stops to limit all the options that Lane Kiffin likes to work with. Number one key in this football game, I can't put it any other way. Ole Miss's running offense against LSU's running defense. The winner of that battle has a huge leg up in this game on Saturday afternoon. All right, that's our Genesis opening drive. Our Thursday show is brought to you by Skenes Farms Premium Angus Beef. I've given you my thoughts on the biggest matchup in this game. We'll go up to Oxford and talk to Michael Katz what he thinks about this matchup when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is that website. Storm season is here. It's been quiet. I like that. You like that. Everybody likes that. But we know that that's not always the case. Make sure your property policy is in good shape for storm season. Have the folks at the Highland Insurance Group check it out. You're probably fairly aware of the nuts and bolts of how a property policy is supposed to work. But do you know anything about cyber insurance? What about employment practices liability? Do you know that all of your employees are rightly categorized on your workers' comp insurance sheet? All of these things are imperative, especially when you've got a potential loss. Make sure that once you pay that premium, you're going to have coverage when you need it. That's what the Highland Insurance Group does best. If you want 20% off, don't call them to wave a magic wand. That's not what they're going to do. But they can be sure your coverage is properly written, and that's what they want to do for you. That's how they keep clients. They've got great people, they have great relationships with their clients, and they make sure that they are covered. If you're a business owner, CFO, risk manager, and you want to make sure your policy reads properly, let the Highland Insurance Group audit it for free. That doesn't cost you anything. It's Jonathan Carbo and his team at the Highland Insurance Group. Find them online at HighlandIG.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Skenes Farms.
Will be buzzing on Saturday morning into Saturday afternoon. LSU and Ole Miss, 2:30 kickoff from Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. Michael Katz will be there. He covers the Rebs for the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal. Good enough to give us a little bit of time here on this Thursday. Michael, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We're doing quite well. What do you feel about this Ole Miss team after a month of football? The same you did in mid-August or any different?
You know, I think I came in probably expecting the defense to be a little bit further along than it is, and it has looked better the last 6 quarters or so. That second half against Arkansas, and then what they did to Tulane. It's a young group. I just think that we all had, given how good the defense was last year, kind of maybe unrealistic expectations. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned about this team is they're kind of gutsy. Last year, it's well documented, they lost 3 games by 13 points, including to LSU. That game against Kentucky at home was really kind of ended up being the nail in the coffin when it came to the CFP race. And then obviously the loss to Florida. They couldn't win close games last year, and I think a lot of that was because they couldn't run the ball when they needed to. It happened against LSU. It happened against Florida. They just couldn't get big conversions when they needed to. This year, they played a tight one at Kentucky, and Kentucky was a really big one for them just to kind of get over that hump, especially with what happened last year. They were able to run the ball late. They were able to close the game out against Arkansas by forcing a late fumble. This is a team that I think is not probably quite as star-powered as last year's, but they have won close games, and I didn't see that from the team last year. So I think that's my biggest takeaway is that, at least as of now, they've learned how to close out games better than they were able to last year.
Let's not bury the lead any further here. Quarterback's obviously a huge storyline with Austin Simmons dealing with the ankle injury. There were reports yesterday that Trinidad Chambliss is going to be the guy. How do you feel about it at this point in the week, and what has Chambliss given him?
Yeah, I mean, it's like trying to get the nuclear codes, trying to get injury information from Lane Kiffin, and there's obviously a lot of games and shit that goes on. Austin has been available the last 2 weeks, and he did play against Arkansas. He came in and threw a touchdown when Trinidad injured his hand for a moment. But I just think that with the way this offense wants to operate, or at least has the last couple of weeks with wanting design quarterback runs, Trinidad's going to give you the best option in that regard with Austin's ankle injury. And Trinidad's just been one of the stories of college football the last few weeks. He's a Division II national champion for Florida State that I think everybody just assumed was the guy you bring in to be the backup, and here he is. He's got 400 yards of offense, I believe, each of the last, his 2 starts, and he became just the 4th Ole Miss quarterback to ever throw for 300 and run for 100 in the same game. So, and I think the biggest thing, though, is that he hasn't turned the ball over. Austin Simmons had thrown 4 receptions over his 2 starts. Trinidad has not put the ball in harm's way, and I think, especially in a game like this, where you can't afford to give away possessions, I think that's going to be really important. So, obviously, Austin's a really, really talented player. He was undisputed QB1 heading into the season, but Trinidad's given them a lot of good stuff, and I think with what the offense wants to do, he just might be the best solution right now.
As far as the run game goes, I just spent 15 minutes talking about it, but what has Lacey given them out of the backfield?
He's been great, and that was I think people think of Lane Kiffin's offense as being very quarterback heavy and friendly, and he's obviously done great work with quarterbacks, and Jackson Dart was a first-round pick for a reason, but Lane Kiffin's best teams have always run the ball really well, and last year was the worst rushing Ole Miss team that he's had, and they really tried to get back to their roots and brought in a bunch of running backs, Kewan Lacey being the featured one. He's been dynamic. His numbers have been down a little bit the last couple of weeks, but Trinidad Chambliss's numbers have sort of evened that out with his scrambling and then the designed runs with him. I think Lacey leads the SEC with like 7 rushing touchdowns. We knew he was an explosive player coming in, but he's had better contact balance and been a little bit tougher at the goal line than at least I expected. So, unlike last year where it was sort of a revolving door at running back for a lot of the season, like we all know, like the bell cow is Kewan Lacey, and he wants to be the guy that is able to grind out games for them.
Michael Katz is our guest, covers Ole Miss for the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal, Tigers and Rebs, 2:30 on Saturday. Let's move to the Ole Miss defense, which had such star power last year. I'm not aware of that kind of star power on this unit, but statistically, they've been really bad against the run and really good against the pass. Let's start with the good. Lowest completion percentage allowed in the SEC. Do you feel like this is a strong secondary?
It's funny because that was one of the biggest question marks coming in was the secondary, because it was pretty much all new guys. They lost some really good players from that secondary last year. Trey Amos was a high second-round pick, and he's playing really well for the Commanders right now. They lost a lot of really good guys from that secondary last year, and we all thought that was probably going to be the weak link coming in. And so far it's held up pretty well. If we're being honest, they haven't played. Taylor Green, he has his way to an extent a little bit, but he's proven to be one of the better quarterbacks in the country so far. And he's the best quarterback they've played, and he had some success. But I think part of that too was because of his ability to, you got to account for his running as well. But for the most part, I think they've held up pretty well in the secondary. I think the thing that's probably most surprising is that the secondary's held up as well as it has with a lack of a pass rush. This was a team that led the nation in sacks per game with 4 and has 4 total so far. So I think everything, given all those things, I think the secondary has done a pretty good job so far.
Can't really say the same for the front 7 as far as rushing yards allowed, and then you mentioned the pass rush. What's the problem up front for Ole Miss?
It's been really surprising. Kamarion Franklin, their end, has 12 quarterback hurries this year, which is among the best in the SEC, and I don't know if he has a full sack yet. The leading sack guy is Xavier Harris. He's a defensive tackle with 2. Centurion Perkins had 10.5 last year. He does not have any yet. So they've been really close, but they just haven't been able to finish off those sorts of plays. As for the run game, earlier in the year when we asked Lane Kiffin about it, he said part of that is, when you're scheming for teams, you're willing to concede some things when you take away other things, and that's the numbers aren't going to look great when the scheme is asking you to do certain things. But it feels like we're at a point, a third of the way through the regular season where it does seem to be a problem. It settled down a little bit in the second half against Arkansas. Last week against Tulane, I think they ended up with about 180 yards, but that was kind of garbage time stuff with the game being so out of hand. So I do think it's getting better, but I just think that they missed a lot of tackles early on in the season. This kind of have had guys out of position. It's such in stark contrast to what we saw last year. When again, I know there were so many stars, but they gave up 80 yards a game, and right now I think they're at about 190, somewhere around there in terms of rush defense. So it's been really kind of jarring looking at these last 2 defenses, but the talent's there. It's just a matter of at what point does it really all start to click? And I think they feel like maybe last week was when it really started to click.
Obviously a huge field goal at the time in overtime last year for Ole Miss from north of 55 yards to get points on the board, unless you scored one play later to win it. But if this game came down to a kick, how would Ole Miss feel about that?
They love Lucas Carnero. They had a good one last year too in Caden Davis. He made I think it was 57-yarder. Yeah. He hit the heck of that thing. But he did miss a kick against Kentucky, and I think fans remember that one as well. But he was really good, and so when they went in the portal and brought in Carnero from Western Kentucky, who was a Lou Groza semifinalist, and he actually just missed his first kick of 50 yards or more in his career this year. But he's hit a 54-yarder already. They feel really, really good about him, and I think that's part of what makes this matchup interesting. Is we think of Lane Kiffin as this, the fourth down gambler, but they've only gone for it twice this year on fourth down, and I think part of that is because they feel pretty good about their specialists, and there's some games where you're just going to have to take the points, and that's because that's what's best for you. So it's been really interesting to see how they handle that. But if it comes down to the kicking game, I think they feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, Lane's been as aggressive as any coach in the country, quite literally on fourth downs, and that just hasn't been the case. Do you think it's just a kicking deal, or do you think there's a philosophical change because he's gotten burned a little bit by going for fourth downs?
Yeah, I mean, it's live by the sword, die by the sword to an extent. It's worked a lot for him. I think last year I think they'd gone for it 7 times through 4 games. And I think you would probably expect that because your defense was so good, right? Like if you had to put them on the field, you felt okay with it. I think with this year, you feel really good about your specialists and putting points on the board. But 2, the defense hasn't been quite as strong. So maybe you don't want to put them in bad field position situations. The game I go back to where it kind of seemed like a turning point was against Georgia last year when they didn't go for it on fourth a bunch and they kicked field goals, and obviously they ended up winning that game. And I feel like that was sort of a big moment. And obviously, he's going to have games where he goes for it on fourth a ton. But I think in like big games where you're going to need every point, it feels like he kind of learned that lesson. So I think there's a lot of those factors kind of go into it.
Michael, we appreciate the time. Enjoy the football on Saturday.
Absolutely. Appreciate you.
He is Michael Katz, Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal, covering the Rebs. Great stuff from him there. I'm going to be very, very candid with you, the listener here. I make a pick on this game in 25 hours and 22 minutes. I don't have one yet. And that is probably different from almost everybody in this building that I'm assuming is going to take LSU in this game because LSU, it looks like a really good football team this year. I'm candidly concerned about LSU's ability to run the ball, and that would be taking advantage of Ole Miss's weakness, and I don't know if they can. But I also can see this thing getting really sideways for Trinidad Chambliss against the best defense he's ever seen. I'm torn. I'm not sold on a pick of LSU, and I'm certainly not sold on a pick of Ole Miss. I've really studied this game a lot. I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I've had now guests from Ole Miss come on. I've obviously dug into a lot of stats that I've ripped off here over the last couple of days. It's I feel like the line is right. It's swung back and forth to a 1.5 either way. I think this is going to be a very, very close game. And I don't have a pick. It's interesting to hear from the other side of things. So appreciate Michael for giving us a little bit of time. I want to remind you that our Thursday shows are brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. If you've listened to me talk about Sagrera Farms, you've listened to me talk about the way that beef is scored. It's the intramuscular fat score. If you're talking about select meat, it's about 30% of what's out there is 0 to 3 on that IMF score. If you're talking about choice meat, you're talking 3 to 8. That's 60% of what's out there. Average stuff. Prime is the best of the best. That's what the finest steakhouses have. That's above 9 on the scale. Sean sent me some pictures that they're cutting today on the farm. 12, 14, 15.9, 18.1. That's double the requirement for prime that they are cutting right now today on the farm. The demand has been off the charts for them. So if you're thinking about being on the fence, whether or not I should get in at Sagrera Farms, like the stuff is unbelievable right now, and you're going to want to call them because this stuff's not going to last. They'll have more, but the stuff they're cutting right now, not going to last for a long time. Here's Sean's cell phone number if you want some of the best beef around. Top 1% in the country, just outside Baton Rouge in Ethel. Give Sean a call. Course 225-719-1723. 719-1723. He's passionate about this stuff. The product is consistently excellent. It's prime every single time, and it makes a big difference. So get on the phone. Give Sean a call. Sagrera Farms brings you our Thursday shows. When we come back, I've got a lot of segments that are here to kind of entertain, have some fun. Like, I don't know how much fun the next segment is. I think that you're going to learn something in this next segment. I'll leave it at that. We'll come back and do it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
So this happened last night. Paul Skenes, 6 innings shutout baseball for the Pirates against the Reds. Pirates actually won the game, shockingly. But Skenes is done. He pitched here on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They won't be rushing him back on 3 days rest when they're 55,000 games out of the playoffs. So Paul Skenes' second season in Major League Baseball is done. He will be the Cy Young Award winner. That was essentially determined when Zach Wheeler went out with a shoulder issue with about a month to go. But Skenes will have absolutely earned it. He finishes the season with an ERA of 1.97, which is the best in all of baseball. Now, how significant is his lead on the rest of baseball? That's what I wanted to look into. Paul Skenes' ERA of 1.97 is 1.46 better than third place in all of baseball. Hunter Brown is third. He's with the Astros. His ERA is third in all of baseball among starters, 2.43. So the difference between Skenes at 1 and Hunter Brown at 3 is the same distance between Hunter Brown at 3 and 27th in Major League Baseball. It's a run and a half. It's massive. It's Skenes, Tarek Skubal, who's going to win the Cy Young in the American League, who's awesome. But he's not just winning the ERA title. He's destroying it. He is more than a run and a half better than Christopher Sanchez of the Phillies, who's second place in the National League. It's historic stuff he's doing. He's the first pitcher with back-to-back, in the history of baseball, ever, with back-to-back seasons of a sub-2 ERA with 10 strikeouts per 9 innings pitched and 100 innings pitched. It's a lot of stuff to be thinking about when you're driving around, but first pitcher ever, ERA under 2, more than 10 strikeouts per 9 innings, and he threw 100 innings, meaning he's not a closer. First ever with back-to-back seasons like that. To go further, there are only 2 pitchers in the history of baseball that have done this in multiple seasons. He did it back-to-back in his first 2 years. The only 2 pitchers to have done that multiple times in their career are Pedro Martinez, I think the best right-handed pitcher in my lifetime. I'll hear Greg Maddux. I will hear Roger Clemens, certainly, but I would go Pedro. Best right-handed pitcher of my life, did it multiple times. Clayton Kershaw, second best left-handed pitcher of my life, behind Randy Johnson, did it multiple times. That's it. End of discussion. And Skenes has done it the only 2 times he had a chance to do it. Those guys carved out 18-year careers. What Paul Skenes is doing in Pittsburgh is absolutely historic every time he takes the baseball. And oh, by the way, would you like to venture a guess at the history he's made, what his won-loss record is this year? It is 10-10. That's going to be the worst record by a Cy Young winner ever. He will not finish the year above 500 with an ERA a run and a half better than everyone else in the National League. It's incredible stuff you're witnessing from Paul Skenes. And I'll say this, let's just make this a referendum on Hunt shortly. Not to make everything about me, but you can make fun of me. It's my show. I watched Paul Skenes pitch in the fall of 2022 at LSU. Now, keep in mind, I did this after looking at his statistics at Air Force, which were good, not great, and having gone back and watched his start against Texas in the regional. Air Force was the 4 seed in Austin. He got the start against Texas. Think of how bad a draw that is for Texas, knowing what we know now. The next year, he became the best pitcher anyone's ever seen in college baseball. The next year, he literally started the All-Star game for the National League and won the Rookie of the Year. And the next year, he's won the Cy Young by a landslide. So this was only 3 years ago when Texas faced him in a regional. And they knocked him all over the place. So that's what I had to go by with Paul Skenes. I was like, well, his numbers were, he's 6'6", and the fastball is fast. That's good velocity. But he wasn't that great at Air Force last year, and this is the SEC. And then I went out there the first time I saw him pitch, and Josh Pearson pumped one into the right field bleachers. And I'm going, okay, I think he's a starter. But I'm not convinced he's an ace. I'm not convinced that he's going to be a dominant number one. I've seen dominant number ones at LSU. I watched Alex Lang's career. I saw Aaron Nola. I've seen dominant ones. I'm not certain he is one. I'm an idiot. Turns out he was number one. And what he's doing is just sensational at the major league level. And I've said this 5 or 6 times. If you listen every day, I so appreciate that. If you listen and retain that information, I appreciate it even more. But this will be redundant to you. But I just find it to be a relevant talking point when things like this happen. I always wonder, what if you took one of those great NBA players and dumped him into college basketball? What if you took one of those great NFL players and dumped him into college football? What if you took one of the great players in Major League Baseball and dumped him into college baseball? You just watched it 2 years ago in Baton Rouge, because he was already one of the best pitchers on the planet when he was in Baton Rouge. He's better today than he was then. He's got more pitches. The splinter has been transformative for him. He, no doubt, has, stronger and probably throws a little bit harder. He's a better pitcher than he was, but it's not astronomical. And the results are what they were. The best pitcher we've ever seen in Baton Rouge. And it's such a shame that he's wasting away in Pittsburgh right now. But he's got to do everything he can to keep his body in tip-top shape, to continue to stay healthy, and he'll sign a just unbelievable deal when he gets through this in a couple of years. That was always going to be the case the second the commissioner read his name out with that Pirates P on the screen behind him, because this team will not spend money. Their lineup is a joke. It's atrocious. Their bullpen is awful, and they will not add. Ask Garrett Cole what happens when you're an ace in Pittsburgh. You got to leave and go to Houston and then sign the mega bajillion deal with the Yankees. Andrew McCutchen ended up getting shipped out of town. They don't pay stars. They will not pay Paul Skenes. But he's got to make sure he stays healthy to get to that. It's a bummer. I was bummed out when he went to the Cubs division, but then they switched away from the unbalanced schedule, so it actually didn't even matter, because the Cubs don't play the Pirates significantly more than they play the Braves or the Dodgers. But it doesn't take, the fact that organization is a joke doesn't take away from the history he's making every time he takes the ball. It's truly unbelievable. 2 consecutive seasons of Major League Baseball with an ERA under 2. He's put himself in conversations with Pedro Martinez and Clayton Kershaw already. Unbelievable. He was on the mound in Omaha 2 summers ago. Paul Skenes, going to be your NL Cy Young Award winner, finishes up his season with a batting average against of 199, 216 strikeouts against 6 home runs, an ERA of 1.97, and 187 and 2/3 innings of work for the big right-hander. Congrats on another awesome season, and he can go play golf now, because Pirates won't be in the playoffs again. All right, let's come back and close it out next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
That would be the hour we're closing out, not the show. One Bath and Closets, onebathandclosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Safety is a big, big deal, especially in a room like the bathroom. You're talking about a hazardous place, especially as folks age. And so if you've got someone in your life that's aging that you want to make sure that's mitigated against a little bit, non-slip floors, walk-in tubs, showers with benches, guardrails, and slippery places. All those things are things that David Duvall and his team do all the time. So if that sends off some bells in your head thinking, that might be something I want to look into, have a conversation with David. That's all it starts with. That's free. Say, hey, this is what I'd like to do. Kind of what does that look like? Time frame, cost, all those things. And David's happy to sit down and talk to you. You decide you want to go through with it. David will do it right the first time and leave the competition behind. It's One Bath and Closets. Find all their great work as well as that free consultation online at onebathandclosets.com. Onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Thursday show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. If you're looking to catch us on game day, you certainly can. Eagle 98.1 game day. Firing up at 9:30 a.m. from the Rouses on Burbank. Charles Hannegriff and Matt Musso Saturday morning. They'll go for 3 hours, 9:30 to 12:30. That's when they hand it off to the LSU Sports Radio Network. That is myself, Brandon Taylor, and Marlon Favorite. We'll be with you from 12:30 till about 2 o'clock, maybe a few minutes after that. Hand it to the broadcast team in Oxford where you can hear the call of the game. 30 minutes after it goes final, myself, Brandon, and Marlon with you on the Fighting Tiger post-game report on the LSU Sports Radio Network for an hour, and 90 minutes after LSU and Ole Miss go final. It'll be Charles Hannegriff and Richard Dixon from here in studio, taking your phone calls, reaction to the Tigers and the Rebs. That'll be for about 2 hours after that. So starting at 9:30 in the morning till probably close to 10 o'clock at night, we are live and local here on the Guarantee family of networks. You can catch that on Eagle 8.1 simulcast right here on 104.5, 104.9 ESPN Baton Rouge. I checked out LSU basketball practice yesterday. I promise I'm not going deep into the weeds on basketball here in September. Just a couple of notes to the casual fan who really don't care to dive into the roster at this point, which we won't. Jalen Reed, who tore his ACL in the win over Florida State last year on December the 5th, was out at practice, had a big brace on his knee, and certainly wasn't moving full speed, but was able to participate in all the 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 4-on-4. The only time Jalen Reed sat yesterday was during the 5-on-5 period. So that's the last hurdle for him to clear. Then he'll take that brace off. And I didn't get a timeline from Matt McMahon, and I don't think anybody has an exact one. But I feel like with 6 weeks to go, there's a pretty good chance Jalen Reed could be ready for the season opener as the basketball team cranks things up in early November. So good to see him. That's a guy that LSU just could not replace last year. They did not have any physical size beyond him. They had Damian Collins, who's 6'10", 205 pounds. They had Corey Chest, who's like 6'6", and Derek Fountain, who's 6'10", but just about 220. They've got actual size now with Reed coming back, Michael Nwoku coming over from Mississippi State, who's 260 pounds. So got a little bit of size there. That's a good deal. The other thing is I noticed the coaching staff. You, the casual LSU basketball fan, will notice the coaching staff. You had Tazin Mitchell out there, who's an assistant. You had Keith Hornsby, who's joined the LSU staff. He just finished his professional career, so he's out there. You've got Ronald Dupree, who's their general manager, who was out at practice, standing there off to the side. You've got Marcus Thornton, who's the SEC Player of the Year, who's out there as well. And you got Jalen Courtney, who was on those Johnny Jones teams as well, who's an assistant there. So those guys scored a lot of points in the PMAC and are pretty recognizable out there at practice. I laughed because Matt McMahon was running practice and they were about to get into a drill, and he said, "I need a coach right here," and he pointed to the wing that can play worth a darn. And so Hornsby runs over there because Hornsby's one of the best players out there. He literally finished his professional basketball playing career within the last year. He's still in great shape, can move, and certainly can shoot the ball. And so, yeah, he can play it worth a darn if you need somebody to do a drill. But you think about a coaching five that's got Keith Hornsby, Marcus Thornton, Tazin Mitchell, Jalen Courtney, and then Ronald Dupree. Like, that'll work. That's
pretty good.
That'll work. That's some solid talent that's been assembled there on the coaching staff. Last little note there. I didn't watch. I watched an hour and 10 minutes of practice. Didon Thomas, who I believe we will call DJ Thomas, Didon Thomas Jr., so DJ Thomas, I believe is what we'll refer to him as moving forward. He's the point guard. He's going to have to be the answer that they have not figured out in the Matt McMahon era. They just have bad point guard play. They just have. He's got to be one of the better point guards in the league, and the hope is that he is. We'll see, but he's 6'1", 180 pounds or so, really shot it great yesterday. It was good to see. It's uncontested shooting drills, so I'm not going to get too excited about it. A lot of college guys can stand out there and knock down shots when there's nobody guarding them. But he's kind of the key dude to this LSU offense and really their team this year running the point. So I got a chance to see him. If you'd like to read more detail about the basketball team, you're a little bit curious about that, I've got a story up at louisianasports.net. Happy to have you get into that. That'll end our basketball discussion for the week after 4 minutes here. But just wanted to touch base on that briefly here as we've got a quick segment for the end of the hour. While we do have a little bit of time, though, I just gave you the Saturday schedule. Tomorrow, Football Friday starts up at 7 o'clock. It'll be Jake and Matt on Off the Bench from Rouse's from 7 to 10. Early edition of Live at Lunch, 10 to 1 from Rufino's. Invite you to go on by and see those guys for lunch on a Friday. I'll be here tomorrow, 1 to 3, and then Matt will be here from 3 to 6 on AFR. And then you'll have Cade Wassan Louisiana Prep preview at 6 o'clock until 6:45, leading up to Catholic High football. And we'll have the call of that game until about 9. So you're talking about 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., 14 hours or so, live and local every football Friday here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. So lock us in for as much of that as you can tomorrow as we get you ready for LSU and Ole Miss. Speaking of Tigers and Rebs, I talked a lot about it in the first hour. My first segment, the biggest key to this game, laid it out as clearly as I can. It's Ole Miss's running game against LSU's defense. That's the biggest deal in this game. Gave you some statistics on why that may be and kind of what to expect on Saturday. If you want to catch that, you can wherever you find your sound. Hunt on LSU on YouTube as well. Also talked to Michael Katz, who covers Ole Miss for the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal. Got his perspective on those Rebels at 1:15. We got a lot to do in the second hour. Talk to Chris Blair 20 minutes from now. Talk to Luke Johnson 35 minutes from right now on the Saints. So come back with us after national headlines with SportsCenter. We got another hour on this Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is the website. Every car that's on the lot is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. They are so intent on making things convenient for you at Genesis of Baton Rouge. That's why you don't even have to set foot on the lot if you don't want to for 3 years. You can start that car buying process online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. If you see something you like and they got all the information you're looking for on the website, they'll come to you for the test drive. You want to see that GV80? Have them drive it to you, whether that's at work, your lunch break, or at home. They'll let you drive it. If you decide that's what you want, they'll deliver your car to you. They got online contracts, and you're on your way. And then, oh, by the way, you're going to need an oil change at some point. You're going to need your air filter changed, the standard maintenance that you always need for your vehicle. For 3 years, it's complimentary and valet. They'll come get your car, handle it, bring it right back to you. It's all about convenience with a luxury brand of vehicles at a reasonable price. That's Genesis of Baton Rouge. You can find them at Airline and PQ or GenesisofBatonRouge.com.